I lay sprawled across my living room floor, surrounded by crumpled receipts and a spreadsheet that confirmed what I already knew. My wedding fund, 5 years of careful saving, had vanished. Not misplaced, not accidentally transferred, but deliberately stolen by my own sister. And what she didn't know as she paraded around town planning her sudden dream wedding was that I held the deed to the charming Victorian house she'd been obsessing over for years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks ago. I'd logged into my savings account to transfer the final deposit for my wedding venue, a rustic vineyard overlooking the valley where Ryan had proposed last autumn. We'd been planning this day for 18 months, meticulously budgeting every detail from the hand-calligraphed invitations to the locally sourced catering. But instead of the $42,000 balance I expected to see, I was staring at $836.42. My first thought was fraud, some digital thief who'd somehow bypassed the bank's security. I called the customer service line, heart hammering against my ribs as I waited through 7 minutes of instrumental music before a representative answered. "Ms. Bennett, I see the withdrawals you're concerned about," she said, voice steady and professional. "But these appear to be authorized transfers to another account." The first one was processed on April 12th, followed by 3 more over the subsequent week. "That's impossible," I said, pacing my kitchen floor. "I never authorized any transfers." "Well, according to our records, they were initiated through your online banking portal using your credentials. The funds were transferred to an account under the name Vanessa Bennett." My sister's name hit me like a physical blow. Vanessa, who'd been staying with me for the past month after another dramatic breakup. Vanessa, who'd borrowed my laptop repeatedly to job hunt while I was at work. Vanessa, who suddenly announced her engagement to a man she'd been dating for less than 3 months, right around the time my money started disappearing. "I need those transfers reversed immediately," I said, voice shaking. "I never authorized them." "I understand your concern, but since the transfers were made using your login credentials to a family member, we'll need to file a formal fraud investigation. That process typically takes 45 to 60 days, and I should warn you that if the recipient has already spent the funds..." I hung up. 60 days. My wedding was in 38. The room seemed to tilt slightly as I slumped against the kitchen counter. 5 years of overtime shifts, freelance projects on weekends, saying no to vacations and new furniture, and even a reliable car. All of it gone. And not by some anonymous hacker, but by my own sister. The same sister who'd cried on my couch for weeks about being unlucky in love, while I made her comfort food and assured her the right person would come along. I drove to my parents' house without calling first. Their modest 2-story colonial looked the same as always. Mom's hydrangeas blooming along the front path, Dad's Volvo parked at a slight angle in the driveway. The familiarity made what I was about to do even harder. I found them in the backyard, my father tending to his vegetable garden while my mother scrolled through her iPad on the patio. They looked up with matching smiles that quickly faded when they saw my face. "Olivia, what's wrong?" My mother set down her tablet. "You look terrible." I didn't bother with pleasantries. Vanessa stole my wedding fund. All of it. Over $40,000. My father straightened from his tomato plants, soil still clinging to his gardening gloves. "That's a serious accusation, Liv." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact. She transferred the money from my account to hers while staying at my place. The bank confirmed it." My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "There must be some mistake. Vanessa wouldn't do something like that. She's planning a wedding, Mom. A sudden wedding to a guy she barely knows. Where do you think that money is coming from?" "Well, Connor's family is quite well off," my mother replied, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "His father owns that development company. I'm sure they're helping with expenses." "Call her," I challenged. "Ask her directly where she got the money for the Plaza Hotel deposit she was bragging about in the family group chat." My father removed his gardening gloves, his movements deliberate. "Olivia, you've always been..." competitive with your sister. Is it possible you're jumping to conclusions because you're stressed about your own wedding plans? The casual dismissal stung worse than I'd anticipated. Competitive? Dad, she took everything I saved. The bank statements show exactly when and where the money went. This isn't about competition, it's theft. Lower your voice, my mother hissed, glancing toward the neighbor's yard. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? My wedding is ruined, and you're worried about what the neighbors might think? My father sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. Liv, even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying it is, you need to consider the bigger picture. Vanessa and Connor's wedding is connecting our family to the Hawthorns. Do you understand what that means for all of us? For your father's business? I stared at him, understanding washing over me like ice water. The Hawthorns were real estate moguls in our city. My father's small construction company had been struggling for years. A family connection to the Hawthorns would mean contracts, stability, growth. So that's it. My voice had gone quiet. You're okay with her stealing from me because her fiancé's family might throw some business your way? Nobody's saying that, my mother interjected. But maybe we can look at this as a family investment. Your father and I will help you plan something smaller, more intimate. You and Ryan don't need all that extravagance anyway. A family investment? I repeated, the words tasting bitter. You mean my investment? In a wedding that isn't mine? Olivia. My father's tone had shifted to the one he used when ending discussions. You've always been the responsible one. The steady one. You can handle this setback. Vanessa is more fragile. This opportunity with Connor, it could be transformative for her. And my wedding? My future. That's just collateral damage? My mother stood, brushing invisible wrinkles from her linen pants. We'll discuss this when everyone's calmer. Why don't you go home, take a breath, and we'll figure something out. I looked between them. These people who had raised me, taught me right from wrong, celebrated my achievements, and now stood united in their willingness to sacrifice my happiness for my sisters. Something fundamental shifted in that moment. A cornerstone of my understanding of family crumbling away. You know what? I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. You're right. I am the responsible one, and I'll handle this myself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I drove home in a daze, muscle memory navigating the familiar streets while my mind raced through options. Ryan would be home from his business trip tomorrow. How would I tell him? What would we do? Postpone the wedding? Cancel it entirely? Take out a loan we couldn't afford? As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text from Vanessa. OMG, just saw the perfect centerpieces for the reception. $400 each, but so worth it. Want to come see? The casual audacity of it sent a wave of nausea through me. She wasn't even trying to hide it. In her mind, this was normal. Taking what she wanted because she'd always been allowed to. Because she was fragile. Because the rules didn't apply to her in the same way they applied to everyone else. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I went inside and opened my filing cabinet, pulling out a folder I hadn't looked at in over a year. Inside was a deed and a set of keys. The Victorian house on Maple Street had been my grandmother's. When she passed 2 years ago, she'd left it to me with a simple note. For the one who always visited, not just when she needed something. The house needed work, extensive work, which was why I hadn't moved in or sold it yet. I'd been saving for the renovations, planning to start them after the wedding. Vanessa had always loved that house. Even as children, she'd claimed the window seat in the reading nook as her spot. When our grandmother was alive, Vanessa rarely visited. But when she did, she'd spend hours talking about how she would decorate each room when she lived there, as if her inheritance was a foregone conclusion. When the will was read and the house went to me, she'd cried for days. Not because she missed our grandmother, but because she'd lost the house she'd already mentally claimed. Now, looking at the deed with my name printed in clear black letters, a plan began to form. I called my attorney the next morning. Janet had helped with the transfer of the property after my grandmother's death and had become something of a friend in the process. "I need to know my options for a property I own," I explained after pleasantries were exchanged. "Specifically, what control I have over its sale or rental." "Complete control, assuming there are no liens or encumbrances," Janet replied. "What are you thinking of doing with it?" "I'm considering selling, but I've had interest from someone who wants to rent with an option to buy. I want to understand what kind of agreement would protect me while giving them the impression they have a path to ownership." There was a pause before Janet answered. "Olivia, that sounds like you're planning to mislead someone. That's not typically advisable." I took a deep breath. What if I told you this, someone stole my entire wedding fund, and my parents are essentially letting them get away with it? Another pause, longer this time. "I think I need the full story before I can advise you properly." So I told her everything: the theft, my parents' reaction, and yes, my half-formed plan to use the house as leverage. When I finished, Janet was quiet for several seconds. "What you're describing is several crimes on your sister's part," she finally said. "Identity theft, fraud, possibly wire fraud, if the transfers crossed state lines. You could go to the police. And then what? Best case scenario, my sister goes to jail. My parents never speak to me again, and I still don't have my money back in time for my wedding. The legal system isn't designed to resolve this quickly enough." "No," Janet agreed. "It's not. But revenge schemes rarely turn out the way people hope either." "I'm not looking for revenge," I insisted, though part of me knew that wasn't entirely true. "I just want what's mine. And I want Vanessa to understand that actions have consequences." Janet sighed. "Come to my office this afternoon. We'll discuss your options, legal options, that might give you the leverage you're looking for without crossing any ethical lines." I agreed, thanked her, and hung up. As I set my phone down, it buzzed with another text from Vanessa. "Decided on the centerpieces. Put down deposit. Also, can you believe it costs $10,000 just for basic floral arrangements? This wedding planning stuff is insane." I stared at the message, anger and disbelief warring inside me. She was spending my money I'd sacrificed years to save, and treating it like monopoly cash. In her world, consequences simply didn't exist, but they were about to. Ryan came home that evening, travel-weary but smiling when he saw me. The smile faded as soon as he got a good look at my face. "What happened?" he asked, dropping his bag in the entryway. I'd rehearsed this conversation all day, but now that the moment was here, words failed me. Instead, I handed him my phone with the bank statement displayed. He studied it, confusion giving way to understanding, then shock, then anger. "Vanessa did this? Your sister Vanessa?" I nodded, throat tight. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I talked to Janet today. She says we have options, but none of them get our money back quickly." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he made when trying to process something difficult. "So what, we just let her get away with it? Use our emergency fund? Take out loans? Olivia, that's over $40,000. "I know. Trust me, I know exactly how much it is." My voice cracked slightly, but I might have a different kind of leverage. I told him about the Victorian house, my grandmother's bequest, and Vanessa's long-time obsession with it. As I outlined what Janet and I had discussed, his expression shifted from skepticism to cautious hope. "You really think this will work?" he asked when I finished. "I think Vanessa wants that house more than anything. And I think she's used to getting what she wants without consequences. This time, there will be consequences." Ryan crossed the room and pulled me into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry this is happening," he murmured against my hair. "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you." For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt something other than panic and betrayal. With Ryan's arms around me and a plan taking shape, I felt a flicker of determination. Vanessa had taken something precious from me. But she'd forgotten that I held something precious to her as well. The next morning, I texted Vanessa, "Need your opinion on something important. Can you meet at Grandma's house at 2?" Her reply came seconds later. "OMG, yes. Haven't been there in ages. Still love that place so much. See you at 2. No questions about why I needed her opinion or what was happening with the house. Just excitement at the prospect of visiting the property she'd coveted for so long. That told me everything I needed to know about her priorities. I arrived early, unlocking the front door and stepping into the foyer. The house had been sitting mostly empty since my grandmother's death, with only the heirloom furniture remaining. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the stained glass panels flanking the door, and the air held that distinctive emptiness of uninhabited spaces. Yet even in its neglected state, the house was undeniably beautiful. Hardwood floors stretched through the entrance hall into a spacious living room with a stone fireplace. A curved staircase with intricate balusters led to the second floor, where 4 bedrooms featured vintage details like clawfoot tubs and built-in window seats. The kitchen needed a complete overhaul, but its breakfast nook offered a charming view of the maple trees that gave the street its name. I moved through the rooms, opening windows to let in fresh air, mentally cataloging all the work that needed to be done. New plumbing, updated electrical, kitchen renovation, bathroom modernization, at least $200,000 worth of improvements before it would be truly livable. Money I didn't have, especially now. At precisely 2 o'clock, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Vanessa had arrived, right on time for once in her life. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and prepared to execute the plan I'd spent the previous day refining with Janet's help. Game on. I watched Vanessa step out of her gleaming white BMW, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, blonde hair cascading over shoulders draped in a cashmere wrap that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She moved with the confident entitlement of someone who had never faced real consequences for her actions. "Olivia," she called, waving as if we were meeting for a casual lunch date rather than a confrontation about her theft. "This place still has that magical feel, doesn't it? I swear I can still smell Grandma's cinnamon rolls when I walk up these steps." I forced a smile, reminding myself to stick to the plan. "Thanks for coming. I thought you'd want to be involved in this decision." "Of course. You know how much I adore this house." She brushed past me into the foyer, immediately spinning in a slow circle to take in the entryway's vaulted ceiling and antique chandelier. God, it's like stepping back in time. Remember how we used to slide down that banister when Grandma wasn't looking? I remember you sliding down it and blaming me when you knocked over Grandma's crystal vase, I replied, the memory still sharp despite the years. Vanessa laughed as if I'd shared a delightful anecdote rather than a painful reminder of her lifelong pattern. We were such terrors. Well, mostly me. You were always the good one. She moved into the living room, trailing manicured fingers along the dusty mantelpiece. "So what's this big decision you need my opinion on? Are you finally going to renovate?" "Because I have ideas. So many ideas." I followed her, noting how she was already mentally redecorating, claiming spaces that weren't hers. "Actually, I've been considering selling." She froze, then turned to face me, expression suddenly serious. "Selling? Olivia, you can't. This is our family legacy. It needs at least $200,000 in renovations before it's properly livable. Money I don't have." I let that sink in, watching her face carefully. Especially now. Her gaze slid away from mine, focusing on the ornate ceiling medallion above us. "Well, maybe you could take out a loan. Or wait a few years until you've saved up." "Saved up?" I repeated flatly. "Like the savings that disappeared from my account? The wedding fund that was transferred to yours?" The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." I held up a hand. "The bank confirmed the transfers. 4 of them, starting April 12th. Transferred directly to your account." Her voice had risen an octave. "I would never—" "Stop lying." My voice remained calm, controlled. "I've seen the statements. I've talked to the bank. I know exactly what you did, and so do you. She blinked rapidly, eyes darting around the room as if seeking an escape route. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to the wounded tone she'd perfected since childhood. Okay, I borrowed some money. I was gonna pay you back. You know I'd never actually steal from you. Borrowed? I almost laughed. You emptied my account without asking. That's theft, Vanessa. It's a crime. Don't be so dramatic. We're family. She waved a dismissive hand. Besides, you and Ryan are already established. You have your careers, your condo. Connor and I are just starting out. This wedding is our chance to make connections, to secure our future. With my money, my future. I told you, I'll pay you back. After the wedding, after we're settled. My wedding is in 36 days. I cut in. I had vendors booked, deposits paid, final payments coming due. All planned around the money you took. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. You can postpone, or scale back, do something smaller. Like you're doing? With my $40,000 at the Plaza Hotel? She had the grace to flush. That's different. Connor's family has expectations. His mother has been planning this her whole life. We can't disappoint them. But it's fine to disappoint me? To destroy my wedding plans? To steal from your own sister? Vanessa's expression hardened, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Mom and Dad understand. They know this is better for the whole family in the long run. Connor's family can change everything for Dad's business. They might understand. I don't. I moved to the window, gazing out at the sprawling backyard where a weeping willow still stood sentinel over the koi pond our grandfather had built decades ago. Which brings me back to the house. What does the house have to do with any of this? Wariness had crept into her voice. I turned back to face her. I've had an offer. Quite a good one, considering the condition. The buyers want to gut it, modernize everything. Probably tear out all these original features, reconfigure the layout completely. They can't. The words burst from her with genuine horror. This house is historic. All these details, the craftsmanship. You can't let some developer destroy it. I need the money, I said simply, since my wedding fund was stolen. She stared at me, comprehension dawning slowly. This is blackmail. This is consequences. I moved to the antique secretary desk in the corner, opened the drawer and removed a folder. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Her voice had gone cold, calculating. Return my money. All of it. And I'll give you a 2-year lease on this house with an option to buy at a fixed price. Her eyes widened. You'd sell me the house? I'd give you the opportunity to buy it, yes. At market value, with the first right of refusal when the lease ends. But I don't have, she stopped herself, realizing what she'd been about to admit. Don't have what? The $40,000 you took from me? Funny. Neither do I. I opened the folder, revealing the contract Janet had prepared. You have 24 hours to return my money. Every cent of it. If you do, you sign this lease, move in whenever you want, and get the chance to buy your dream house when you're financially ready. And if I don't? Challenge flashed in her eyes. Then I accept the developer's offer, and you can drive by next year to see the modern monstrosity that replaced Grandma's house. I snapped the folder shut. Your choice. She stared at me, a dozen emotions crossing her face in rapid succession. Anger, calculation, fear, resentment, and finally, a grudging respect. I didn't think you had it in you, she said finally. To stand up for myself. Neither did I. But I'm learning. I need to think about this. 24 hours, I repeated, sliding the folder back into the desk drawer. I'll be at home, waiting for confirmation of the transfer. Full amount. And you'll really let me have the house? This isn't just some trick to get the money back. Unlike you, I keep my word. The contract is ready. Return my money, and the house is yours to lease with a guaranteed purchase option. She nodded slowly, gaze sweeping around the room one more time. I've always loved this place. I know. That's the only reason we're having this conversation instead of one with the police. Her eyes snapped back to mine, narrowing slightly. You wouldn't. Try me. I moved toward the front door. 24 hours, Vanessa. The clock starts now. I didn't sleep well that night, anticipation and doubt keeping me tossing until dawn painted the bedroom walls with pale light. Ryan had been supportive but concerned, worried that Vanessa would find some way to manipulate the situation as she had so many times before. What if she goes to your parents? He asked as we lay in the darkness. You know they'll take her side. Let them, I replied, staring at the ceiling. This isn't about them. It's between Vanessa and me now. Morning came with no word from my sister. I checked my bank account every hour, stomach clenching with each confirmation that no transfers had been made. By noon, doubt had begun to creep in. By 3 o'clock, I was rehearsing what I would say to the wedding vendors I'd have to cancel. By 6, I was researching the legal process for reporting family-based identity theft, a knot of dread forming at the thought of the permanent rift it would create. At 7:42 p.m., exactly 23 hours and 12 minutes after our confrontation at the Victorian, my phone chimed with a banking alert. A transfer had been initiated to my account, $42,000. 5 minutes later, Vanessa texted, "It's done, all of it, I'm coming over." She arrived half an hour later, none of her usual breezy confidence and evidence as she stood on my doorstep. I gestured her inside without a word. "I did it," she said, dropping onto my couch without waiting for an invitation. "Every cent. It took some doing. Had to cancel a bunch of deposits, rearrange some things, but it's done. You win." I checked my banking app again. The transfer was pending but confirmed. This isn't about winning, Vanessa. Isn't it? She looked up at me, a strange mix of resentment and newfound respect in her expression. You're getting your money back, and you'll still get to hold that house over my head forever. Sounds like winning to me. I sat in the armchair across from her. I'm getting back what was already mine. And you're getting a chance at something you've always wanted. If that's winning, the bar is pretty low. Whatever. Where's the contract? Let's get this over with. I studied her for a moment. This person who shared my blood, but seemed to operate on a completely different moral plane. For the first time, I felt something beyond anger and betrayal. Something almost like pity. Why did you do it, Van? Really? You could have asked for help. I would have helped you, within reason. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You wouldn't understand. Try me. A heavy sigh escaped her. Everything always comes so easily to you, Liv. Good grades, steady career, perfect relationship. Do you have any idea what it's like to always be compared to someone who never seems to struggle? To always feel like the screw-up by comparison? Is that what you think? That my life is effortless? I shook my head in disbelief. I worked 2 jobs through college. I stayed at that horrible starter position for 3 years because it was the only place that would hire me in my field. Ryan and I lived in that tiny studio apartment with the mold problem for 4 years while we saved. Nothing about my life has been easy. But you make it look easy, she insisted. You never complain, never ask for help, never fail. And everyone, Mom, Dad, Grandma, even my friends, they all hold you up as this paragon I should aspire to be. So you stole my wedding fund to what? Prove you could have something better than me for once? She shrugged, a gesture so casually dismissive of the pain she'd caused that I almost couldn't believe it. Connor is a catch. His family has connections. This wedding needs to be perfect. I saw an opportunity and I took it. An opportunity, I repeated slowly. That's what you call stealing from your sister? I was desperate. For the first time, genuine emotion broke through her carefully maintained facade. Connor's mother has been questioning whether I'm the right fit for their family. His ex-girlfriend is from old money, has all the right connections. The wedding had to be spectacular, had to prove I belong in their world. When I saw your savings just sitting there, waiting for my wedding, which was planned first. She had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just knew I needed to secure my future with Connor, and that money was the solution. And now? And now I'm scrambling to figure out how to pull off the wedding his family expects without the budget I was counting on. She sighed dramatically. But I'll make it work. I always do. I reached for the folder containing the lease agreement. There's one more condition to our arrangement that isn't in this contract. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What? That's not fair. We had a deal. The condition is this. You tell Connor what you did. All of it. The theft, the lies, using my login information to transfer funds. He deserves to know who he's marrying. Absolutely not. She stood abruptly. That would ruin everything. If knowing the truth about you ruins your relationship, then it deserves to be ruined. I remained seated, voice calm. I'm not asking you to tell his family or make a public announcement. Just be honest with the man you claim to love. He'll leave me, she whispered, real fear in her voice for the first time. Maybe. Or maybe he'll surprise you. Either way, it's the right thing to do, and it's non-negotiable. She paced the small confines of my living room, agitation evident in every movement. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand perfectly. You're afraid of losing the fantasy you've created. But real relationships, real connections, they're built on truth, Vanessa, not performances and perfect weddings. She stopped pacing, a calculating look replacing the panic. Fine, I'll tell him. But not until after you sign the lease agreement. I shook my head. No. You tell him first, then we sign. I need to know you've actually done it. How? Want me to record the conversation? Sarcasm dripped from her words. Have him call me afterward. I don't need details. I just need confirmation from him that you were honest. She stared at me for a long moment, clearly searching for a loophole, an angle, some way to manipulate the situation to her advantage as she'd done countless times before. Finding none, her shoulders slumped slightly. Fine, I'll tell him tonight. Good. I stood, moving toward the door. Let me know when it's done. The lease will be waiting. After she left, Ryan emerged from the bedroom where he'd been tactfully giving us privacy. Think she'll actually tell him? She wants that house more than anything, I replied. And for the first time in her life, she's realizing that actions have consequences. That her usual tactics won't work with me anymore. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. I'm proud of you. Standing up to her couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. I leaned back into his embrace. But it was necessary. For both of us. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Connor's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a calm, "Hello? Unsure what to expect." "Olivia." His voice was strained. "Vanessa told me what she did. I wanted you to know that I had no idea. None at all. If I had known—" "I believe you," I said, relief washing through me that at least Vanessa had followed through on her promise. "What happens now is between you and her." A heavy sigh came through the line. "I honestly don't know. I love her, but it's a lot to process. Not just the theft, but the deception. The ease of it. I understand." And I did. The person you love, revealing themselves to be someone different than you believed, was its own kind of betrayal. Whatever you decide, I hope it brings you peace. "Thank you," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. For what she did to you, to your wedding plans. It's unforgivable." "Not unforgivable," I corrected gently. "Just not easily forgiven. There's a difference." After we hung up, I texted Vanessa a simple message. "Bring the wedding photos you took from Grandma's album when you come to sign the lease tomorrow, 10 a.m. Her reply was quick. "How did you know about those?" "I know more than you think. 10 a.m. Don't be late." The next morning, Vanessa arrived punctually, a manila envelope tucked under her arm and shadows beneath her eyes, suggesting a sleepless night. She handed me the envelope without comment, watching as I opened it to reveal the vintage photographs she'd taken from our grandmother's collection years ago. Images of our grandparents' wedding that should have been shared, not hoarded. "Thank you," I said, setting them aside. "How did Connor take the news?" "About as well as could be expected." Her voice was flat, drained of its usual animation. "He's taking some time to think. The wedding's on hold." "I'm sorry." She gave me a sharp look. "Are you?" "Yes," I said honestly. "I never wanted to hurt you, Vanessa. I just needed you to understand that what you did was wrong. Really wrong." Message received. She gestured to the lease agreement on the coffee table. We signed the papers in silence, Janet's careful legal work ensuring that both our interests were protected. When the final signature was in place, I handed Vanessa a set of keys. The locksmith changed the locks last year, but these should work for everything: front, back, basement, shed. She took them, fingers closing around the metal like it was something precious. "Thank you. Don't make me regret this," I said quietly. A ghost of her old smile flickered across her face. "Wouldn't dream of it. Besides, I'm pretty sure you'd find a way to make me regret it more." After she left, I sat looking at the old photographs, these tangible pieces of family history that Vanessa had tried to claim exclusively for herself. There was our grandmother in her elegant 1950s wedding gown, our grandfather looking impossibly young and nervous beside her. The same stone church where our parents had married 30 years later. The same garden where family portraits had been taken for generations. Ryan found me there, still looking through the photos an hour later. "Everything go okay with the lease?" "Yes," I nodded, holding up one of the pictures. "Look at this. My something old for the wedding, Grandma's pearl hair comb. I thought it was lost forever." He studied the photo, then looked at me with quiet understanding. "Are we back on track then? With the wedding?" "We are." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks, though I'm thinking we might make a few changes to the guest list. "Your sister?" "Still invited, but seated far from the microphone during the reception." I laughed softly. "And my parents will hopefully have learned something from all this." He finished for me. "We'll see." I gathered the photos, already planning to have the best ones restored and framed. Either way, we're getting married in 34 days, surrounded by people who truly support us. That's what matters. Later that evening, a text arrived from Vanessa. "At the house. It feels right being here. Thank you for this second chance. I won't waste it." I stared at the message for a long moment, weighing my response carefully. Finally, I typed, "The house has always been waiting for someone who truly appreciates it. Take good care of it." Her reply came quickly. "I will. And Liv? I'm sorry, really. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a full reckoning or a complete transformation. But it was a start. And sometimes, that's enough to build on." My wedding week arrived with a flurry of final details, vendor confirmations, and the kind of joyful anticipation I'd feared might never return after the theft. The money was back in my account, the vendors were paid, and everything was proceeding according to our original plans, with a few meaningful adjustments. Ryan and I had decided to shift some priorities, reallocating funds from the elaborate floral arrangements to a videographer who would capture not just the ceremony and reception, but interviews with guests about their own love stories. We'd scaled back the extravagant 5-course dinner to make room for a donation to the literacy nonprofit where I'd volunteered for years. These changes felt right, more aligned with who we were as a couple than the lavish spectacle we'd initially planned. 3 days before the wedding, I was reviewing seating arrangements when my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen, the first contact from either of my parents since our confrontation in their backyard nearly a month ago. "Hello?" I answered, bracing myself. "Olivia?" My mother's voice sounded strained, unfamiliar. "Do you have a moment to talk?" "I'm in the middle of wedding preparations," I replied, not ready to make this easy for her. "What do you need?" She hesitated, then said, "Your father and I would like to come see you. There are things we need to discuss before the wedding." "Is this about Vanessa?" Because if you're calling to defend her actions again. No, she interrupted. It's not that. Please, Olivia. Just a short visit. Something in her tone, a vulnerability I rarely heard from my confident, composed mother, made me pause. Fine. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I have appointments in the afternoon. Thank you. Relief colored her voice. We'll be there. After hanging up, I sat staring at the seating chart, thoughts churning. Ryan and I had moved my parents to a less prominent table, tacit acknowledgement of their betrayal, without the drama of uninviting them entirely. What would tomorrow's conversation change, if anything? My parents arrived precisely at 10 the next morning, both looking uncomfortable and oddly formal. My father in a pressed button-down shirt, my mother in a conservative dress I recognized from church Sundays. They stood awkwardly in my living room until I gestured toward the couch. Would you like coffee? I offered, more out of ingrained politeness than genuine hospitality. No, thank you, my father answered, then cleared his throat. Olivia, we owe you an apology. The words hung in the air, so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't respond. We were wrong, my mother continued when I remained silent. About Vanessa, about the money, about everything. We failed you, and we're deeply sorry. I studied their faces, searching for the familiar signs of manipulation or the subtle blame-shifting they'd perfected over the years. Instead, I saw something new, genuine remorse. What changed? I asked finally. My father sighed heavily. Connor came to see us last week. He told us everything. How Vanessa stole your wedding fund, how you confronted her, how you leveraged the house to get your money back. He wanted us to understand what had really happened. My mother paused, searching for the right word, devastated by what Vanessa did. Not just the theft, but the deception. The way she presented herself as someone she wasn't. And you believed him, I said slowly. But you didn't believe me when I told you the exact same thing. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We've always had a blind spot when it comes to Vanessa, my father admitted. We saw her struggles and thought she needed more support, more protection. Instead, we enabled behavior that hurt everyone, including her. Connor's family has withdrawn their support for his business ventures with your father, my mother added, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. They feel they can't trust a connection to our family now. Your father's company has lost potential contracts worth millions. So there it was, the real catalyst for their change of heart. Not moral clarity, but financial consequences. I see, I said, keeping my voice neutral. So when it affected your bottom line, suddenly Vanessa's actions became unacceptable. That's not fair, my father protested, but weakly. Isn't it? You dismissed my pain, my financial loss, my ruined wedding plans. You defended her theft as a family investment. But when it impacts your business prospects, suddenly it's a serious matter. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You're right to be angry. We deserve that. But please believe that seeing the full extent of what Vanessa did, how she manipulated everyone, including us, it's been a wake-up call. We are truly sorry, Olivia. Not because of the business consequences, but because we failed as parents to uphold what's right. I wanted to hold on to my anger, to make them feel the depth of their betrayal as I had. But looking at them now, diminished, humbled, genuinely remorseful, I felt the hard knot of resentment in my chest begin to loosen slightly. I appreciate your apology, I said finally. I really do, but trust isn't rebuilt with one conversation. It takes time, consistency, actions that align with your words. We understand, my father nodded. We're not asking for immediate forgiveness, just a chance to begin making amends. Starting with your wedding, my mother added. We'd like to contribute financially. No, I cut her off firmly. The wedding is taken care of. Ryan and I have handled it ourselves, as we always plan to. Of course, she said quickly. We just thought. I know what you thought. I softened my tone slightly. But throwing money at the problem isn't the solution here. What I need from you is harder. I need you to recognize and respect boundaries. to treat me and Ryan as equals, not as children who need your guidance or correction. To acknowledge that your relationship with Vanessa has been unhealthy for everyone involved. They both nodded, looking somewhat lost. Parents suddenly realizing they didn't know how to parent adult children who stood firmly in their own truth. "We'd still like to be part of your wedding," my father said hesitantly. "If you'll have us." I thought about the seating chart waiting on my dining table, about the complicated emotions I'd carried these past weeks, about the future family gatherings that would inevitably include all of us in some capacity. "I'd like that too," I said finally, "but on my terms. No last-minute suggestions, no critiquing my choices, no comparing my wedding to anyone else's. Just be there to celebrate with us. That's all I ask." Relief washed over their faces. "We can do that," my mother promised. "Thank you for giving us this chance." After they left, I made a single adjustment to the seating chart, moving my parents back to their original table near the front of the reception. Not because all was forgiven, but because healing had to start somewhere, and I didn't want the shadow of family discord hanging over what should be a day of joy. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect early summer day that photographers dream about. I stood by the window of the bridal suite, watching guests arrive at the historic stone chapel, feeling strangely calm. The chaos of the past month had burned away anything superficial, leaving only what truly mattered. Ryan, our love, the life we were building together. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting my maid of honor with the bouquets. Instead, Vanessa stepped into the room, looking uncharacteristically subdued in a simple blue dress. Not the bridesmaid gown she would have worn in our original plans, but elegant and appropriate for a family member attending the wedding. "Hi," she said, hovering near the door. "Is this okay? I can leave if you'd rather be alone." I studied her for a moment. She looked different. Her makeup more natural, her posture less performative. There was a rawness to her I'd rarely seen before. "It's okay," I said, gesturing for her to come further into the room. "How are you?" She gave a small, rueful smile. "Surviving, living in Grandma's house. Working at that gallery downtown. Actual work, with a paycheck and everything. It's different." "And Connor?" Her expression flickered with genuine pain. "We're taking a break. He says he needs time to figure out if he can trust me again, if I'm the person he thought I was." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. She shrugged, though the casual gesture couldn't quite mask her hurt. "Maybe it's for the best. I'm learning a lot about myself lately. Some of it isn't pretty. Growth rarely is." She moved to stand beside me at the window, watching the gathering crowd below. "Your wedding looks beautiful." "Everything you planned." "Almost everything," I corrected gently. "We made some changes. Good ones." "I wanted to give you this," she said, holding out a small wrapped package. "It's not much, but—" I took it, carefully unwrapping the tissue paper to reveal a delicate silver frame. Inside was a black and white photograph I'd never seen before. Our grandmother as a young bride, standing in front of the Victorian house, radiant with joy. "Where did you find this?" I asked, tracing the edge of the frame. "In the attic at the house. There was a whole box of photos I'd never seen. I thought you should have this one." The gesture touched me deeply. Not just the gift itself, but what it represented. Vanessa sharing something she would once have kept for herself, acknowledging my connection to our shared history. "Thank you," I said softly. "It's perfect." She nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. I should go find my seat. I just wanted to wish you happiness. You deserve it, Liv. You always have. After she left, I placed the framed photo on the vintage vanity where my something borrowed, my best friend's pearl earrings, something blue, a sapphire pin from Ryan's grandmother, and something new, a delicate silver anklet, were already arranged. The photograph, my something old, completed the traditional bridal tokens, a bridge between past and future. When I walked down the aisle 30 minutes later, I felt the weight of all that had happened these past months, the betrayal, the confrontation, the painful growth, transform into something unexpectedly beautiful. Not because the hurt had disappeared, but because I'd discovered a strength in myself I hadn't known existed. I'd stood firm in my own worth, refused to be diminished, and somehow emerged with deeper compassion, rather than hardened resentment. Ryan waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving mine as I approached. When I reached him, he whispered, "You look magnificent," with such genuine awe that I couldn't help but smile. "Not just the dress," I whispered back. "Everything." He nodded, understanding perfectly what I meant. We'd weathered our first major crisis together and emerged stronger, more aligned in our values, more certain of our partnership. The ceremony unfolded exactly as we'd planned, simple and heartfelt. When it came time for our personally written vows, Ryan's voice carried, "I promise to grow with you, to learn from you, and to cherish the strength you bring to our relationship every day. With you, I am my best self, and I vow to spend our life together worthy of the trust you've placed in me." My own vows, written weeks before the theft and crisis, seemed even more meaningful in its aftermath. "Ryan, I promise to build our life together on a foundation of truth and transparency. I promise to face difficulties by your side, never alone, drawing strength from our partnership when my own falters. I promise to create a home where integrity matters more than appearances, where hard conversations are welcomed, and where love is expressed through both words and actions. I vow to be as courageous in loving you as you have been in loving me, today and always." At the reception, I danced with my father, his hand trembling slightly as he led me around the floor. "I'm so proud of you," he said quietly. "Not just today, but for how you handled everything these past weeks. You showed real character, Olivia." "I had to," I replied simply. "Some things are worth fighting for." Later, as Ryan and I moved among our guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes, I spotted Vanessa sitting alone at a table near the garden doors. On impulse, I walked over and sat beside her. "Hey," I said. "You doing okay?" She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "Better than I expected, actually. Your friend Tasha introduced me to her brother. He's an architect specializing in historical renovations. We talked about the Victorian, about restoration techniques that honor the original design while making the space livable. It was nice, normal." "That sounds promising." "The house or the architect?" she asked with a hint of her old sparkle. "Both, maybe?" I smiled. "You know, that house needs someone who truly loves it, who sees its value beyond just appearances. I think Grandma knew that when she left it to me, that eventually it would find its way to the right person." "I'm trying to be worthy of it," Vanessa said quietly. "Of the chance you gave me. I never thanked you properly for that." "You don't need to thank me, just don't waste the opportunity." She nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about going back to school. Finishing that historic preservation degree I started before." "Before you decided it was easier to marry rich?" I finished for her, but without malice. She laughed softly. "Exactly. Turns out the shortcuts weren't shortcuts at all." Our conversation was interrupted by Ryan, coming to claim me for another dance. As I stood to join him, Vanessa caught my hand. "Liv? I really am sorry. For everything." I squeezed her hand briefly. "I know. Sometimes the hardest lessons leave the deepest impact. Just keep moving forward." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of dancing, toasting, and laughter. When Ryan and I finally departed amid a shower of rose petals, I caught a glimpse of my parents standing with Vanessa, the three of them looking somewhat tentative but united in their well wishes. In our hotel suite that night, surrounded by scattered rose petals and the peaceful quiet that follows a perfect celebration, I showed Ryan the photograph Vanessa had given me. "It's amazing how much you resemble your grandmother," he observed, studying the image. Same determined expression. Determined? Strong, sure of herself. He set the frame carefully on the nightstand, like someone who knows her own worth. "I'm learning," I said, thinking of how far I'd come from that desperate day when I'd discovered the theft. "We all are, I think. What happens now? With your family, I mean." I considered the question seriously. Healing, hopefully. Not erasing what happened, but moving forward with clearer boundaries, more honesty. Real relationships instead of comfortable illusions. And the Victorian? It's where it belongs. With someone who truly loves it, flaws and all. I smiled, recognizing the metaphor. Sometimes the most valuable things aren't what we originally planned for, but what we discover we need along the way. 2 weeks after our honeymoon, I received a text from Vanessa with a photograph attached. She stood on the Victorian's front porch beside Tasha's brother Michael, both of them in paint-splattered clothes, smiling broadly. Behind them, I could see the freshly painted original trim work around the door, restored to its 1890s glory. "Slow work, but worth it," her message read. "Like most important things." I showed the image to Ryan as we unpacked wedding gifts in our living room. "Looks like she's really doing it," I observed. "Taking care of the house, making good choices." "Taking care of herself too," Ryan added. "That's the real restoration project." I nodded, thinking about the parallel journeys we were all on. My sister rehabilitating both a historic home and her sense of self, my parents re-examining decades of family dynamics, Ryan and I building our marriage on a foundation stronger than any wedding could symbolize. The path forward wouldn't be perfect or without challenges. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly. Patterns, once established, resist change. But for the first time in years, I felt genuine hope for my family's future. Not the glossy, picture-perfect version we'd pretended to have, but something more authentic. Something built on truth rather than appearances, on accountability rather than avoidance. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Vanessa's message. "Beautiful progress. Both the house and the company you're keeping. Dinner next Friday? You can tell me all about those original fixtures you mentioned finding in the basement." Her reply came quickly. "We'd love that. I'll bring before and after photos. And wine." "Definitely wine." I smiled, setting down the phone to help Ryan arrange our new dishes in the kitchen cabinets. This was the wedding gift no one could have wrapped or registered for. The gift of honesty, of standing in my own truth, of relationships based on respect rather than convenience. Some lessons come at a high price, but their value extends far beyond what was initially at stake. In fighting for my wedding fund, I'd gained something far more precious. The knowledge that I had the strength to protect what mattered, the wisdom to recognize when forgiveness served healing, and the courage to build a life centered on integrity rather than appearances. That night, I placed my grandmother's framed wedding photo on our bedroom wall, a reminder that legacies aren't just about houses or heirlooms, but about the values we choose to carry forward. In her quiet determination, in her authentic joy, I saw a reflection of the woman I was becoming. Someone who understood that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or wedding budgets, but in the courage to live honestly, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. And that was an inheritance worth far more than any house could ever be. 6 months after my wedding, on a crisp autumn morning, I stood on the porch of the Victorian house, a steaming mug of apple cider warming my hands as I watched the maple trees along the street surrender their leaves to the wind. The house had transformed under Vanessa's care, coming alive in ways that surprised even me. The peeling paint had been replaced with historically accurate colors, the crumbling porch rebuilt with salvaged period lumber, and the overgrown garden tamed into a charming cottage landscape that would have made our grandmother proud. "Morning," Michael called, emerging from the front door with his own mug. Tasha's architect brother had become a fixture here, his expertise in historical renovation matched only by his growing affection for my sister. Vanessa's just finishing up a call with the Historical Society. They're considering the house for a preservation award. I smiled, genuinely pleased. She mentioned that possibility last week. It would be well deserved. She's put her whole heart into this place, he agreed, leaning against the porch railing. Never seen anyone so committed to getting every detail right. That was the most surprising development of all, Vanessa's transformation from someone who took shortcuts to someone who valued the patient work of restoration. The change hadn't happened overnight, and there had been setbacks along the way, moments when old habits threatened to resurface. But the Vanessa who greeted me with genuine warmth when I visited now bore little resemblance to the entitled person who had stolen my wedding fund. "How's the book coming along?" Michael asked, gesturing toward the leather portfolio I'd set on the wicker side table. "Slowly but surely," I replied. "The publisher wants the manuscript by spring, so I'm on track." The book had been an unexpected opportunity, born from a blog post I'd written about our family's journey through betrayal to reconciliation. A literary agent had reached out after the post went viral, suggesting there was a book in the story, not just about the wedding fund theft, but about the deeper themes of family dynamics, accountability, and the courage to disrupt unhealthy patterns. Vanessa emerged from the house, tucking her phone into her pocket with a triumphant smile. "They're sending a photographer next week." The committee was especially impressed with the original woodwork we uncovered in the parlor. "Congratulations," I said, accepting her quick hug. "That's incredible." "Couldn't have done it without this one." She nodded toward Michael, who waved away the praise with characteristic modesty. "Or without you," she added, meeting my eyes directly, "for giving me the chance." Those moments still caught me off guard sometimes. The glimpses of genuine gratitude, the absence of the subtle competitiveness that had defined our relationship for so long. We weren't perfect sisters now, by any means. We still disagreed, still occasionally hurt each other's feelings. But the foundation had shifted from rivalry to mutual respect, and that made all the difference. "So," Vanessa said, settling into one of the porch chairs, "tell me more about this partnership offer from Ryan's firm. Are you going to take it?" I sat across from her, considering the question. I'm leaning toward yes. The opportunity to establish a nonprofit division within an established corporate law practice doesn't come along every day. And they're offering flexibility that would work well with the book tour next year. "You'd be amazing at it," she said without hesitation. "The way you stood up to that developer who wanted to tear down the Westfield building downtown? Pure genius." The case she referenced had been a turning point in my career. A pro bono effort to save a historic building from demolition that had garnered local attention and led to the partnership offer. I'd discovered that the legal skills I'd been applying to corporate contracts could be powerfully redirected toward community preservation. "What about you?" I asked. "Any progress on the preservation studies program?" Her eyes lit up. "Actually, yes, I've been accepted for the spring semester. Part-time, so I can keep working at the gallery and continue the house restoration." "Vanessa, that's wonderful!" I exclaimed. "Grandma would be so proud." "I think so too," she said softly. "I found more of her journals in the attic last month. She wrote about this house like it was a living thing, with its own story to tell." I'm starting to understand what she meant. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our parents, who pulled into the driveway in their sensible sedan. They approached the porch with matching canvas tote bags, my father's filled with tools for the backyard shed repair he'd promised to help with, my mother's containing her contribution to our family lunch. "Good morning, everyone," my mother called, her smile genuine if still slightly cautious. The rebuilding of trust was a work in progress, but their efforts had been consistent over these past months. We brought that butternut squash soup you like, Olivia, and sourdough from the bakery near our house. Sounds perfect, I replied, rising to help them with their bags. Ryan should be here soon. He's picking up dessert. The ease with which we now gathered for these family meals was something I didn't take for granted. The first few attempts had been awkward, conversations stilted by unspoken tensions and painful memories. But gradually, as we all committed to showing up differently, my parents with more awareness of their enabling patterns, Vanessa with greater accountability, me with clearer boundaries, we'd found our way to a new kind of family connection. Before everyone arrives, my father said, setting down his tool bag, I wanted to share some news. He glanced at my mother, who nodded encouragingly. I've decided to retire at the end of the year. Really? Vanessa and I spoke almost in unison, equally surprised. Our father's identity had been so wrapped up in his construction business that retirement had seemed like a distant, almost theoretical concept. He nodded, a certain lightness in his expression that I wasn't accustomed to seeing. The company's in good hands with Jason taking over as CEO, and I've been thinking a lot about what matters most at this stage of life. His gaze swept over our small gathering. Family, legacy, being present for moments like this. What will you do with all that free time? I asked, genuinely curious. A smile spread across his face. Well, for starters, I'm going to help Michael and Vanessa with the carriage house renovation. And your mother and I are talking about taking that river cruise in Europe we've been putting off for years. It's about time, my mother added, linking her arm through his. We've spent too many years postponing joy for some future that never quite arrives. The simple wisdom of her statement resonated deeply with me. How many of us did exactly that? Sacrificed present contentment for some hypothetical future reward that might never materialize. I thought about my own tendency toward delayed gratification, the way I'd always prioritized long-term goals over immediate satisfaction. There was value in that approach, certainly, but also a risk of missing the life unfolding right in front of you. Ryan arrived shortly after, bearing a bakery box that revealed a stunning apple tart sprinkled with cinnamon and crystallized ginger. As we gathered around Vanessa's dining table, the original mahogany piece that had been in the house since our grandparents' time, now carefully restored, I was struck by how differently this scene might have played out if I hadn't stood my ground 6 months ago. The theft of my wedding fund had been painful, yes, but it had also been the catalyst for a necessary reckoning within our family. Without that crisis point, would we have continued in our old patterns indefinitely? Would Vanessa have found her passion for historical preservation? Would my parents have recognized their enabling behaviors? Would I have discovered my own capacity for both boundary setting and forgiveness? What are you thinking about so intently? Ryan asked quietly as the others engaged in animated conversation about the carriage house plans. Just reflecting on how much has changed, I replied. And how sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. He squeezed my hand under the table. You made that possible, you know, by refusing to sweep things under the rug the way your family always had. We all did, I corrected gently. Every person at this table chose to do the hard work of changing. After lunch, while the others examined the partially renovated carriage house, I wandered alone through the main house, taking in the details of Vanessa's careful restoration. The original crown molding had been painstakingly repaired, the hardwood floors refinished to their former glory, the stained glass transom window above the front door reconstructed using fragments of the original glass supplemented with period-appropriate pieces. In the library, our grandmother's favorite room, built-in bookshelves now housed not only contemporary volumes, but family photos spanning generations. I paused before one I hadn't noticed before, Vanessa and me as children, maybe 6 and 8 years old, sitting on the window seat in this very room, heads bent over a book we were sharing. "I found that in one of Grandma's albums," Vanessa said, entering the room quietly. "Do you remember that day?" I studied the photograph, memory stirring. "Vaguely. Was it the summer we both had chickenpox?" She nodded. 2 weeks quarantined here while Mom and Dad had to work. Grandma read us every fairy tale in her collection. "And made us oatmeal baths," I added, smiling at the memory. "And let us eat ice cream for breakfast because our throats hurt." "She told us something that summer that I've been thinking about a lot lately," Vanessa said, moving to stand beside me. "She said that sisters are the people who know your stories from the beginning and help you write new ones when the old ones aren't working anymore." The quote struck a chord, bringing back the gentle wisdom of our grandmother's voice. "She was right," I said softly, "about so many things." "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that," Vanessa replied, her voice thick with emotion. "To understand what family really means." "We all got there eventually," I reassured her. "That's what matters." Later that evening, as Ryan and I drove home under a canopy of stars, I found myself filled with a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the resolution of the wedding fund crisis, or the healing of family wounds, but for the deeper understanding I'd gained about the nature of resilience and growth. "I've been thinking about the book," I said, watching the familiar landmarks of our town pass by the car window. "About the message I want readers to take away from our story." Quote, Ryan glanced over, interested. "And what's that?" "That sometimes the worst betrayals can become doorways to our best selves," I replied, the words crystallizing as I spoke them. "Not because the betrayal itself was good or necessary, but because how we respond to it shapes who we become." "I like that," he nodded. "It's honest without being bitter, hopeful without being naive." "Exactly," I smiled, watching our neighborhood come into view. "It acknowledges the pain without being defined by it." That night, as I worked on the manuscript in our home office, I found myself returning to a journal entry I'd written shortly after discovering the theft. The raw anger and hurt captured in those pages felt like they belonged to a different person now, not because those feelings had been invalid, but because they had evolved into something more nuanced, more compassionate, without sacrificing the clear-eyed truth at their core. I opened a new document and began typing. The journey from betrayal to reconciliation isn't a straight line. It's a winding path with detours through anger, grief, boundaries, accountability, and ultimately, if we're fortunate, a new kind of connection built on honesty rather than illusion. Not everyone who hurts us deserves a place in our reconstructed lives. But for those relationships worth salvaging, the work of rebuilding on a foundation of truth offers rewards that the old, faulty structures never could. My sister stole my wedding fund, but in the process, she inadvertently gave me something far more valuable: the opportunity to discover my own strength, to define my own boundaries, and to build a life based on authentic connection rather than convenient pretense. The money was restored. The wedding proceeded as planned, but the real transformation happened within our family system, a shift from patterns of enabling and entitlement to accountability and mutual respect. This isn't a story about perfect reconciliation or fairy tale endings. We still struggle sometimes, still hurt each other occasionally, still have to navigate the complex terrain of family dynamics. But we do so with greater awareness, with tools for healthier communication, and with the shared understanding that relationships worth having are worth the difficult conversations they sometimes require. If you're facing a similar betrayal, know this: Your response to what was done to you matters more than the action itself. Standing firm in your own worth isn't selfish. It's necessary. Setting boundaries isn't punitive. It's protective. And forgiveness, when earned through genuine accountability and changed behavior, isn't weakness. It's profound strength. I paused, considering whether the last paragraph struck the right balance between empowerment and compassion. A text message from Vanessa interrupted my thoughts. Found another box of Grandma's photos in the basement. Some amazing ones of you as a teenager that you'll definitely want for the book. Also, the Historical Society wants to interview both of us about the house restoration. Thought you might want to incorporate that into your final chapter? Let me know. I smiled, typing back, absolutely, and yes to the interview. This story belongs to both of us. Setting down my phone, I returned to the manuscript with renewed clarity. This wasn't just my story to tell. It was a shared narrative of falling apart and coming together again differently. The value wasn't in the perfect ending but in the honest middle, where real growth happens. 1 year to the day after discovering the theft, I stood in a sunlit bookstore, looking out at a small crowd, gathered for the launch of The House We Share, a story of betrayal, boundaries, and rebuilding. Vanessa sat in the front row beside Michael, their hands casually intertwined. My parents occupied the seats next to them, looking simultaneously proud and slightly apprehensive, still adjusting to a family narrative that acknowledged painful truths alongside moments of redemption. Ryan stood at the back, his encouraging smile giving me the confidence to begin. Thank you all for coming. I started, opening the hardcover book to the dedication page. Before I read from the first chapter, I want to share the dedication, which really captures the heart of this story. For my grandmother who left me. I looked up, meeting Vanessa's tear-filled eyes across the room. She nodded slightly, an acknowledgement of how far we'd come and the work still ahead. Not a perfect ending, but a truthful middle. And that was worth far more than any fairy tale conclusion could ever be. The path from betrayal to healing isn't a straight line, and it doesn't end with a neatly tied bow. It continues in the daily choices we make, in the boundaries we maintain, in the forgiveness we offer when it's earned, and in the honest connections we build one conversation at a time. My sister stole my wedding fund, but in the process of reclaiming what was mine, I discovered something I didn't know I needed. The courage to demand truth, the strength to offer genuine forgiveness, and the wisdom to know that real love thrives in authenticity, not pretense. And that, ultimately, is the most valuable inheritance of all, one that can never be stolen, only shared. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.